Well, it's time to sober up from the weekend that was with Gamecock football with another edition of Mix in a Water Monday. And I'm joined now by former Gamecock Langston Moore. And Langston, unlike these last couple Mondays, it seems like this Monday, there's not too many people probably hungover coming off that big win on Saturday night for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, not the bad hangover, but like the good hangover.
Good hangover.
Like, winning these things. And is there a good hangover? That's a good question. But
yeah, hangover 1, not hangover 2 or 3.
That's right. We didn't need to go all the way to like a Bangkok or none of that stuff, man. We took all care of business last night in Williams-Brice, but it was great, man. And we were talking a little bit before the game, but just all around great performance. And now, again, we talked about Beamer ball and all these different things, but in all three phases, I mean, from kicking the field goals to getting it started to defense, turnovers, multiple turnovers, offense, running the football, the plethora of backs, it seemed like it all was a convergence of some of these things that's come together. But don't take anything away from South Carolina, regardless of what was going on with Florida. They still were an SEC team. Dan Mullen still gets his SEC money, so we can't rely on that little, we were whatever. We got their best shot. We gave them our best shot. And at the end of the day, I think it was just a big convergence of everything kind of working towards and all the stuff that these coaches work for. And I'm really happy for those guys because I've been through a long season, 0-11, where, it just feels like things that you're just right on the precipice of like busting through. And it's like, and that's the thing about football. When you don't get it right, you got to wait another week. And then what we did, we wanted to wait a whole nother year. We went 0-11. So we had to wait through the whole spring. But I'm glad that these guys, specifically Shane and these guys, got a taste of, winning a big time game, winning it at home, doing all these different things, especially when nobody expected them. A lot of Gamecock fools didn't expect them to do that. So I'm very happy for those guys, man. It's good.
Yeah, so let me ask you right there, because I bet you everyone that watched that football game, for the most part, let me take that back. The people that were already writing off this team, the people that were already saying, let's look ahead to next season. Maybe there's a win against Missouri, but no hopes. No hopes of going to a bowl game. It's done. You're right. What changed, do you think, on Saturday night? Because, look, yes, Florida was going through their stuff. We know that, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of distractions off the field. Dan Mullen comments, this, and that. That's great. At the end of the day, though, like you said, it was about USC, and they did have an extra week of practice to be able to get ready for this game. What do you think made that difference on Saturday?
Just like I said, I think it was not one singular event, but I think it was a culmination of, the Jason Brown story, giving him an extra week to prepare versus, maybe just being thrust in there 3 or 4 days and, the typical kind of preparation. It feels like Satterfield kind of got his pitch count to get together yesterday, Saturday, with the running backs. One of the things I always thought we would be really strong with this year is having the ability just to be incessant with the running game, finding different ways to, not kind of hide it, because that's what we did well last year with just one back with Kevin Harris. But with all the guys that we had now, I thought that we would try to figure that out. And all the previous games, we really didn't do that. Last night, Saturday night, it really felt like it was an opportunity for them to, and they did that. They went out there and, from the beginning, from Kevin, it seemed like all the backs were getting the calls that they needed, whether it was 11 going for more perimeter runs and Kevin Harris more inside kind of power runs. And there were some talks about that. It just seemed like it was just, everybody kind of got it together. And sometimes, getting your head beat in or having a lot of mistakes or failing a bunch of those tests, you start to really see it. And sometimes I think it was just a convergence of all those things clicking together. And there's probably, if you ask Shane and these guys, you probably get about 10 different answers, but collectively, they would probably average out to be about the same handful of things, 4 or 5 things that, guys just continually to do the right things. And when, the thing I loved about it all was, of course, hearing the story about Jason Brown, but afterwards, just how much he was just lamenting about, his teammates and being able that they trusted him to come into this opportunity, because it's not like he hasn't been on the team this whole entire time through the spring game and through all these different things. But, getting the opportunity and preparing as if from a guy who was on the backside of a roster and had to wait behind a bunch of good guys in front of me, that's not always easy to do. You always want to be like, especially in this day and era with transferring and different things. But, hats off to Jason, hats off to everybody else, because this isn't singles tennis. He didn't go out there and just, dominate everything. Everybody, the offensive line had to play great. I saw our guys getting downfield and bullying people and, being very smart with, playing to the echo of the whistle, but not doing anything foolish, because again, that can also be a thing. Cause I've been on a team where you're just trying to right all your wrongs in one block sometimes. And that's when you get a holding call. And that's where you get a personal foul. And it's like, man, no, just play this play. And it seems like everybody just collectively got the message together last night and obviously played with tremendous effort, played clean. It was phenomenal, man. It was great for those guys to see that.
And see, on this program, we don't beat around the bush. We get the elephant
Right.
out, but we put it out there. And the question, and the question I'm going to ask you now is probably another thing people are thinking about. What did Marcus Satterfield do any differently? Now, in my opinion, and I know you talk with people close to the program, I talk to people close with the program, they all say the same thing, that Marcus, if there was a PhD in understanding offenses, he would probably have that. The issue was it just wasn't able to come to fruition for the beginning of the season. And, regardless of how things play out, whether he's back here as an offensive coordinator or not next season, that doesn't always explain whether or not someone is intelligent in terms of understanding what they're doing. It just sometimes isn't the right fit. Having that extra week, and you've gone through bye weeks before, whether it be in the college level, whether it be on the professional level, how much do you think that helped him be able to take a step back to understand maybe, okay, maybe some of the things that I'm trying to implement aren't working, and we can be able to make some wrinkles here and be able to do what they did the other night?
Well, I think it afforded him an opportunity to look back. That's the good thing about, having a bye week kind of like in the middle of the deal, kind of how ours were, especially in between big games. You got a big enough sample size where you can see, okay, that was foolish of me. What was I thinking? Because that can be the other thing. You talk about how smart offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators or head coaches can be, but sometimes they can be too smart for their own good. And sometimes I think it's, I'm thinking about a guy like Mike Martz. Sometimes he was always very, very smart, but he didn't allow his acumen and how smart he was and how forward thinking he was with his play calling to affect maybe the guys, again, he was coaching the Detroit Lions at one time. This wasn't the greatest show on turf. So he had to understand he didn't have Marshall Faulk, and he couldn't say, man, this is the same play we used to run with Marshall, and why is it not working? Well, because a whole host of things. But, to take that arrogance away, I think that's some of the things that maybe Satterfield was able to work through, see through, hopefully, I'm sure, with the whole entire offensive staff, because that was the biggest thing I saw last night was that I didn't see previously in a couple of other games, especially when it came down to, short yardage situations or trying to convert. It's like the plan was, I don't know if he's a full-on script guy, whatever, but it was, he was going from one play to the next play, and there wasn't that coherence in the beginning of the season, not consistently throughout the whole game. And just like I was saying previously, like one running back would come in, and it would seem like we would try to, put him in a square peg in that round hole, and it didn't work. But he finally got the pitch count right. He finally, kind of like the Braves, he understood, man, let me just give this guy one inning, go against these right-handers and let him do what he does best and come back in and put somebody else in so we can kind of close out this game. But it continued to work. He got the ball to a bevy of different guys, the blocking. And again, all the play calling can work. As a coach told me one time, Lou Holtz used to come there all the time and say, man, go ahead and put this damn play calling, put this game plan in the Hall of Fame. Now, if y'all mess it up, now that's y'all fault. Now, I don't think Marcus is on that status yet, but that's the other thing. Players have to play well, and that's the other thing that can't be overlooked. That, Marcus might have been calling the right calls in certain instances, but we all know with football, all 11 guys, not 10 guys, not 9 guys, have to do their job. And that's the thing that I saw maybe a little bit in previous weeks, especially when it was big-time situations, a guy here, a guy there. And that's just how football is. If the one guy who doesn't do his job to the fullest extent, the ball finds its way, or the defender crosses that guy's face, and it's a 3rd and long situation. Oh, by the way, we got a backup quarterback that's a college coach. Yep. That makes it even harder. So to answer your question, I think it was just a confluence of him maybe throwing away some different things, simplifying it. But it wasn't so vanilla last night where it was like, we know what's coming, because there was still some change-ups, some motion, some shifts, but it wasn't as uncoordinated as it was before, guys bumping into each other. It just seems like, again, it was the much needed bye week. Everything kind of converged on itself, but again, everybody still went out there and executed. And I think that's one of those old Louisms. Again, it wasn't that one blow that knocked those dudes out. It was the 99 previous blows that softened them up before he did that.
Yeah, I'm going to have someone hit that light for me at this hotel so that hopefully there is not a fire going on here. So we'll be a little bit darker here. That's all right. We're on remote. I know you're on remote for your daughter's softball tournament down in Oklahoma, correct?
Yes, in the bustling, great big city of Oklahoma City. So I shouldn't say that so loud because, I'm sure there's a noise ordinance or something.
Here we go. So it'll be a little bit darker. Here we go. See, I'm learning my new laptop over here. We'll brighten it up a little bit. We don't really need to see my face anyway. But let's go back on that though. You mentioned the word simplify, and I think here's the challenging part, right? And I don't know if necessarily you would agree with me or not. The challenging part sometimes when you talk about, is it too complex with the scheme, whether it's offense, defense? You could even say special teams, for crying out loud. The challenging part is unless you're truly in that locker room, I feel like it's difficult to grasp what is the challenges, right? But because we hear the word complex, is it the scheme? Well, it's not necessarily always the X's and O's. Sometimes it's just the way the play is getting called in. And that's been one of the things that's been communicated, how the play is being identified at the line of scrimmage. I mean, we've seen it all year long, but one thing I pointed out last night, and I just don't think it will get enough credit because it's just one of those things people overlook, is just the leadership that Eric Douglas took at that center position and being able to take that workload off of Jason Brown. So he's not having to think as much, pre-snap, and he can just focus on what things are going on after the snap. What do you think when you talk about simplify? What are some of those things that you can do? And it might not necessarily be what USC did last night, but when you talk about simplify, what can some of those things be?
I kind of lean on like some of my old teammates who are coaches now, and when I talk to them about like how they run their spread offense or how they run their tempo stuff, or how do they, in a game where you got something going, how do you do this? And a lot of it always comes back to it being really simple. You see a guy just make, a certain call here or there, or to your point there, the offensive line gets their call, the wide receivers get their call, and the quarterbacks get their call, and everybody moves forward from there. And not to say we didn't have those systems in place, but maybe everybody wasn't seeing everything. And Eric Douglas was one of the guys I thought was going to be, kind of the unsung hero of this team this year, regardless of what happened, because he has the experience. He's been there. He's seen so many different things. Maybe he hasn't played up to but just the communication to make sure he solidifies whatever's happening. And he has guys like Javon Gwynn who have been with him. They have some continuity. So I think it was, again, a confluence of maybe the offensive line simplifying some things. Eric, you just take this, this, and this. You've seen enough football. Let's just go there from that. Jason trusting that and not second guessing it. Maybe it was a little bit different when Zeb was in there and Zeb was like, Eric, that's the wrong call. And not to say that was happening, but I could see how there was a situation where maybe the GA coach who was coming in to play quarterback for this game and we need him, he's second guessing maybe the officer. And that's where maybe that's the blip in the communication and everything is not running very quickly. So to your point, I think it was one of those things. The communication was clean. Everybody executed the right way, because a lot of times, as my old coach used to say, Chris Koz, he was like, man, I don't understand how the hell y'all get all these missed assignments, man. You're a defensive lineman. All you do is go straight, left, and right. If you go backwards, you're wrong. And so a lot of times, but within the game, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And to the outside where everybody's like, I don't understand how you could miss that. The guy's right on you. But the call might be something different where he pulls. So again, I think it might have been a deal where Coach Atkins and the rest of these guys probably figured out, we need to simplify. But it goes back to that keyword trust that Jason understood and everybody was on the same page. And again, the calls were correct. And regardless if the calls weren't correct, players got to make coaches look good sometimes and go out there and dig a guy out the hole and do some different things. And I think that's what you also saw with the running backs last night. There were times where the defensive line spiked up in there and did some different things. And all of those dudes got their foot in the ground, got downhill really quickly. That was definitely, you could see that was definitely a teaching point and something that carried over and hopefully will carry over for the rest of the season, because it seems like we got our pitch count together with that stable of backs.
It's funny you say the word trust, because just this past Wednesday, Douglas used that exact word. He's like, we just have to have trust with one another as players, and we have to have trust in the coaching staff. So it's funny that you bring that word up, because that was certainly on display Saturday night. Defensively, though, right? Going up against arguably one of the best rushing attacks in the SEC. They must have saw something on film, though, because they kept attacking the secondary early, whether that be Dial on that first series or being able to go down the field and being able, I think, the first 10 plays, if not 11, were passes. Whether that be trying to exploit something they saw, or maybe trying to slow down that pass rush, or trying to take them off a little bit when being able to have the run game going on a little bit later. With the way they played last night, because look, Jason Brown, phenomenal story. The offense finally being able to click, that's just terrific. Parker White having a career night, 4 for 4, 16 points after getting snubbed from one of the national kicking awards, from being a finalist. The defense, though, that's going to get overlooked. They held one of the best rushing attacks in the SEC to less than 90 yards. How impressed were you, especially with the defensive line?
Super impressed, because again, that's the beautiful thing I love about defensive line play, because, it's great. Jason Brown, was the quarterback, leader of the offense, but like defensive line play, you saw Birch get in there with the basketball spinny move in there and get in there and get the sack. But the biggest thing I think people overlook, and this is where I come in with my fat guy defensive line stuff, is our guy number 6 was holding his position, because he easily could have kept rushing upfield, but he set the block where the quarterback didn't have a chance to escape, and Birch was able just to be that long daddy long leg spider just
How
laying all
important is
over.
that? How important is that sometimes, my old teammate, he would say, sometimes I feel like a traffic cone out here, but doing your 111s, you might not always get all the stats, the accolades, but how important is it to do your 111? Because if, like you said, if he try to cut up a little bit, that throws everything off, and that's not going to set up Burton.
100%. And the legs that the kid has, both of the kids have from Florida. But you're right, doing your job, and it goes back to that whole deal of trust. And that's the hitting thing. I think a lot of these guys that we don't see that will show itself in wins and more consistent play, that these guys are starting to just trust that, man, I just do my job here and Birch will come from the other side. Maybe he'll get the sack, maybe he'll flush it to me. But I know if I do my own thing, i.e., as the coach says, start wagging out here, making up stuff as I go along, then it's going to be out the back door and everybody's on the sideline like, what's going on? You didn't do your job. That's the simple answer. So all night last night, I think it was everybody doing their job. One of the big things I think with this defense, and I'm glad they rose to the challenge, was this whole idea that it felt like Dan was real arrogant to me last night. Dan Mullen was like super arrogant to me last night. Like, he had the ability to run the football. He had a bunch of different ways to run the football.
Why do you think that was?
I think that's just old play call. I think that's a little bit of who Dan Mullen. I think that's who offensive coordinators are sometimes. But it got to the point too. You said he threw a ball deep 10 or 11, 10 of the first 11 times. I think me and Preston counted like maybe 7 times he was taking shots down the field. Like, that is arrogance. Now, I understand we are poor when it comes to stats, and you can look across the board and look at our tape and say, okay, when we don't get a pass rush, South Carolina's defensive backs can be on their toes or on their heels, however you want to put it, and people can pick on them, and we can really, dig into those guys and take advantage of that. Last night, the pass rush was working, but even still within that, a lot of just the arrogance to do a lot of the stuff, because I think their perimeter screen game was there, and I was really scared about that because we couldn't get off and set the edge a little bit. But for whatever reason, they just kept going away from it and just taking shots. And to me, that just felt like such an arrogant play from Dan Mullen to go out there to test us. But I love it as a defensive guy because you're like, oh, you trying me today? Let's get it. Now, that's great when you making the plays and getting off on third down and getting interceptions. And Jabari Ellis, a.k.a. Cleveland Pinckney 2.0, is picking up the ball and running in. He's the old man of the team. So I think it's one of those deals where it just all was a little bit of arrogance. Our defense stepped up. They've grown. Obviously, the bye week, Clayton Wright called a great game, but individually, it wasn't just one guy, because I expected JJ and Igbari to do some stuff. I expected, certain guys to come out there, but you saw flashes from everybody, and everybody. Again, Damani Staley, man, give this boy something, man, a chicken box or something, because since he stepped in, and because that's what everybody's been asking since he's been, recruited to Carolina. Oh, he's going to be the next legacy, but hasn't really played out. But in this last kind of half a season for him right here, I'm really happy for him because he played well. He made some big stops, and we owe him a couple games because East Carolina game, all these different things. So I think, again, a little bit of the arrogance, but it also was something that challenged our defense and made us step up beyond everything else that is coming with playing on an SEC game, SEC coach. But Dan's felt real arrogant to me last night, and it's great to kind of take those blows and come back and get those turnovers and do a lot of those things. There was a lot of things I was scared about, and Dan didn't even get to like some of the quarterback run and different things like that. And again, maybe that's a tribute to our defense for stomping that out and putting the pressure, and our offense putting the pressure on them to score points. And that's probably something Dan didn't think about that was coming. He's like, these dudes are like, dead last and whatever in offense, man. We'll figure out a way to make sure we put up at least 21, 28 points, because they ain't been scoring anything to that. And lo and behold, we do what we do.
You mentioned the pride of Ridgeview. Seems like it was just yesterday he was playing ball with the Blazers, and he's done a tremendous job stepping up playing linebacker since Green went down. Last thing I do want to ask you, and then I'll let you get going, because you have your daughter's softball tournament, as we mentioned down there.
Boss is mad. That's right. Boss is ready to go.
There we go. Last thing I want to ask you is this, though. You get to a position where things, whether it be offense, defense, and obviously in this case, it was the offense. We kind of talked about it the other day. Sometimes when you look at the film after the fact, and even in that Texas A&M game, and fans had the right to be able to be upset, as bad as things look, sometimes you go back on film, it doesn't look as bad as they may appear to the naked eye. With that being said, there were some people maybe saying, Shane Beamer, especially in year one, he's not going to be the guy. He's not going to be the guy. And we can say all we want. Oh yeah. Ignore the noise. You're 18 to 22 years old. You have an iPhone on you all the time. You know what's being said. To be actually able to see this, how much does that help that trust that you talked about, to be able to physically see this is what we're doing. this is what we're being asked to do, and this is how it looks when we do have that trust. How much can that help this program, especially knowing now 3 games to go? You have a Missouri team that is pretty banged up. You have an Auburn team coming in that, you have some hard feelings maybe towards a coach or two that left. And then on top of that, you have a Clemson team coming in here, which we already know the magnitude of that. We already know what's going on with the streak, but we also know that Clemson has not played their best football in comparison the last couple of years. What can that do for this team down the stretch, knowing that bowl opportunity is right around the corner?
Kids need tangible examples, because it's really hard to tell kids about, this kind of pie in the sky. It's not even a pie in the sky. Sometimes it's hard to tell a group of seniors or guys who are transferring in, especially on the backs of a COVID year. Maybe you might do something and you might not really reap the benefits that we're really painting the whole picture of what it could be in the future. And so I think, one of the greatest teachers I had, Rod Marinelli, happened to be one of the best defensive line coaches I ever had. He was a great teacher because he would always take, regardless of what it was, he would find a tape or something, a game where you were in your jersey doing something, making a play against somebody, and constantly showing you this video of your success. He would never show you once after Monday, after the correction tape, it's over. We're not talking about the bad things. We're just focusing on the good things. And from there, hopefully those things maximize and you grasp on, you understand what's right and what's wrong, what we're asking of you. And I think this game, this tangible example, especially coming off the bye week, I'm sure they had to do a bunch of fundamental stuff, do a bunch of non-sexy stuff. And that's the other thing you always kind of trying to impart on these kids is sexy versus successful. Yeah, it looks great to have a 70-yard pass and touchdown, but what looks a lot better is defending the pass or just winning the game. So a lot of times trying to make sure we always implement and define for our guys what success looks like for our program. We have plenty of examples from last night, from previous games, but maybe some of those previous games are maybe kind of to the kids or whatever, maybe lowbrow or whatever. But like I tell kids, ain't no accomplishment small when it comes to football. I don't care what you say, because again, from a guy who's lost a whole bunch of games twice in the NFL and the SEC, not to say that happens all the time, but it can happen to you. And so you don't never downplay any win regardless. And I appreciate this staff for saying that, because I have been on teams where they'll be like, oh, we won that one, but oh man, you got to take what you can from that. It's just I don't know. If somebody gives you $100, you're going to give 99 of it back because you feel guilty about it? No, you're going to say, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. And, maybe I'll figure out some different way to pay you back or something. The whole point is, I think this is a great teaching example, tangible moment under the lights. You can couple this with some other successes these guys had. And when these guys look back, when it comes time to play the Missouris and the whatevers, you can say, hey, if we do it this way, here's the tape again. First, you start doing you get upfield and get to the level of the quarterback and spin right this way and throw the spike in his back. You'll get home maybe 9 out of 10 times. Everybody else, you do your job. And that's the other thing the younger guys can start seeing. And that's where we get this dirty C word coming in, culture. We do things like this here. We don't do things like that here. We used to do things like this here. We don't do that anymore. And I think that's one of the biggest things this game will do. Because again, trust is really hard. It's really hard to quantify, building that up. But when you've been in a relationship around people you don't trust, and when you've been in a group of room with people you just trust all full out, you can leave your phone, your wallet, your baby, maybe not your baby, but all of those things, the trust is just there, and you're like, and you can just free yourself up to do it. And it's it feels like something you can't really measure, but I think it showed itself last night for these guys, and that's something hopefully these coaches will take and continue to beat into their heads that we do things our way, don't make up stuff, we'll be just fine.
And hopefully they'll be able to get to that level of trust where they can leave the baby in the room. All right. He's Langston Moore. Appreciate it. You guys continue to have those waters. Continue to mix those waters in. This is a mix in a water Monday, but it is a more relaxing one in comparison to the last couple of weeks, especially 2 weeks ago. We'll do it again next week for the Missouri game, but everyone have yourselves a great week and be on the lookout for more great content over on GamecockCentral.com.